Welcome, everybody, to Aeon Byte. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompadour of Gnosis. Take a load off Fanny. Take a load for free. Let's see who gets that little secret message. But welcome, everybody. You've just seen an intro video for those of you watching on video on the Virtual Alexandria Academy. Still the preeminent place for you to learn all about the Gnostics. And as I've said before, these days, if you join the Virtual Alexandria Academy, you will get the entire Meet the Archons conference for free, an extra 15 hours of content that is simply amazing from the best and brightest today in Gnostic studies. And so glad to see you here on this Mercury Day. Exciting show because we will be talking about the tarot. And for this, we have the pleasure of being joined by Jeff Pollari. Jeff, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks a ton for having me, Miguel.
Pleasure is all mine. And with us, too, we've got the original Tarosophist, the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Looking forward to a good show. It's in the cards.
It's in the cards,
Oh,
indeed.
snap. Also, I just had my cat come over here. I got Moon Dance. A little compliment to Moon
Hey
Dog.
there you go.
He's got real Owl Kitty vibes.
All right.
Cool.
He's a serious magician, man. Good to see him.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, as always, and I'll hopefully not forget to remind you, if you have questions for Jeff or comments or insults for me, please super chat them in the chat. And please don't make the chat room into the Chatico full of Witikos. But usually everybody behaves pretty well there in the chat, so everything should be fine. I already see Sunshine Valerie. I see Mr. Chester himself, some other good people. So always nice to see you, as they say.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and as they say, don't mind the insults. Just putting out the show last night or yesterday on the Freemasons. I've gotten some blowback, some angry emails with some nasty words, because I guess some people still want to think, and perhaps they're right, that the Freemasons are the greatest evil upon the earth. But why do I have to get the FUs? I don't know. I'm just here.
You know, Miguel, I wanted to jump in right on that. I just made a video on the Hanged Man. That was my most recent video I did about this. And I just wanted to say, just because, making waves is kind of what's the theme of that Hanged Man, because the gesture that I made for the Hanged Man was to hang loose. And, that's like a surfer's thing. So, if you are making waves, maybe some people might be going down. Other people, are going to get up on that surfboard and they're going to go with it, So, yeah.
Indeed. But but of course, here at AM Byte, I don't, if somebody sends me a nasty email, I don't even block them. I've never taken any comment off YouTube. I just don't. It's like, hey, most of the time you're just projecting your own stuff. If you want to have a conversation, just let me know. Again, I am here getting the most accepted and rejected scholars and provocateurs to your attention. That's my job, and I shall continue doing that. And nothing else. I guess I'll do some housekeeping later on. Next week we have Ian from I think it used to be Gnostic Music Decoding. He'll be on again for, I think, his fourth show to again look deep inside or deep under the hood of the symbolism of a lot of our pop culture heroes and songs and all that. So check it out next week. And plenty of other good shows coming in August and also September, along with Earth, Wind, and Fire. So I guess we should start with you, Jeff. I'm sure this is your first time here, so why don't you let the audience know, how did you become a heretic and damn your soul and come all the way here to what sent you to do what you do today?
More than anything, it was love. I met a woman who I consider to be like umpteenth level shaman, and she was like total Morpheus for me. She just ripped the veil of reality. She warned me beforehand too. She's like, "You want to get into this?" And I was like, "For sure." I'm a Gemini, and I had like this like ultra space cadet ego. I was like, I was in the black hole. That's how high up I was. I was fearless. And then I just got smashed to earth. She's a Capricorn. Okay. So she's this incredible earth energy, and she's full on, you know, what Capricorn is, which you can learn from the devil, is the devil in the tarot. I'm sorry, but that's all the tarot shows you, like what each astrology archetype is, and it's like image format. So Capricorn, the goat, they show it in the tarot. That's like the devil.
Right.
And yeah, so anyways, that experience for me was like the supreme gnosis. I figured everything out, and from that point on, I thought I was like just in the desert in my reality, you know. And there was only like these oases of synchronicity, and so we can get more into like what that real gnosis was. But the tarot was like a constant touchstone for me as I went on this journey. And then it kept on building until I got to the Thoth deck of Aleister Crowley.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great. And then finally I got to actually reading his works. And then this is what's so amazing. This is why I swear by the tarot. So I'm in Minnesota, which is the Lyme's disease capital of the world. And I mean, right in the Pine County region. I mean, it's just everywhere. They say it's up to like 75% of people. And I got it out here. I'm doing sustainability and stuff. And so when you get Lyme disease, it's like a mind, body, spirit thing, because it's almost like the entities like take over. And I was having like true demonic possessions where you can literally feel the stuff under your skin and your whole reality is crumbling beneath you, even more so than what I knew before that. And so it was this real dark time. And then I found Crowley's works, and then I got to actually go to like the very deepest part of like what that represents. Like the corruption went to the maximum grade. I think I personally discovered like the innermost teaching of Crowley's system. I think I reached the very bottom of reality and then came back out on the top, because that's his philosophy, is that when you get to the throne of earth, that is like where the spirit resides. And then so you come back out the top, which is, you kind of see this in his Ouroboros card that he has for the Two of Pentacles, which is a snake biting its own tail, and it's got a crown. So anyways, I actually cured myself of Lyme disease using the magical practices associated with this. I didn't do much else. I did some herb stuff, a lot of other things you have to do afterwards to kind of maintain that. But essentially, you know, I kind of like, I don't know, there's like, I got through it, and there's some cool stuff I could talk about besides that. But that's enough about me, I think, unless there's any questions.
No, it's great. No, please feel continue or bring up when you want to talk about your journey, because we're all here on a journey and it's always good to learn. Yeah, I don't know about the Lime's capital of the world, but I guess somebody's got to have somebody. I live in the middle of nowhere in unincorporated land, and there's nothing here. But then last night, I think 4 miles down, when we drive to a town to ballet, we even know the house, somebody went crazy and shot up their family. You know, 4 people murdered. That's like the first time in 100 years that anything like this has happened. So it's yeah, things happen, and we got to talk about. So my wife, of course, is freaking out. I'm of course very sad that, again, we live in a time where people just snap and you don't know where or when they're going to snap. So yeah, keep doing that magic, right, Jeff? Keep that magic around you. Protect yourself.
Stay in the zone, right? You know, read the signs. I kind of feel like that kind of energy reminds me of like this idea that everything kind of echoes, you know, forward and backwards in time. So, you know, you have I remember there's certain experiences that have been really bad, and then I come back around to that time, everything's good, but still something might come back just to kind of remind me. And then it goes back the other way too, you know, got to pay attention to that sense, and, you know, also stay vigilant all the time.
Exactly. Spirit world, mind world, body world, every world. And it's interesting too, because you sent me your video, the most recent one you made, and it was 19 minutes, and it's excellent because, again, I love how once you start talking about archetypes, you had me at hello, right? Because you're getting deep into the symbolism, into the Jungian, Gnostic, Platonic world that we love here at Aeon Byte. But I was like, oh, I closed the tab or whatever, and I was like, oh, I'll just go to YouTube, Jeff Pollari. I'm like, oh, wow, there's Jeff interviewing Jason Reza Georgiani on Jason's channel. Are you like his unofficial host?
I don't know. This guy, he really likes to talk to me. I think because I really take him seriously. One of the things that came apart of like, I went through that magical period in my life where I was following Crowley's teachings. But you know, there's something about like magic, like true magic. It involves a level of madness, which is something you can read about in Susanna Clarke's book, Fiction. Range of
Lost you for a second.
Tap.
Right when you were saying the book, too. That's
What was that?
usually what was the book again? Sorry, you
Oh,
glitched for a second.
okay. So it's from Susanna Clarke, and it's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is about these like 18th century Victorian era magicians in England, kind of working on the revival of magic from the good old days back when like the alchemists were doing it. And there's kind of this like there's this incredible thing that happens. It has to do with like you can only really tap into real magic when you're just totally insane. And that was me when I had Lyme's disease. I was just, my reality was crumbling. But you know, I actually got past that because I got better. And now I don't have the ability to like conjure the gods like I used to. But actually, I found that reading books is really like the absolute pinnacle now for me in my philosophy of what it means to be like a magician. And because if you think about it, an author is somebody who is like a god unto the world they create. That's like and there's like, and the characters can be alive when you really get into these great books. I mean, literally, like they can be more real than the real. And so I take reading to be and writing to be one of the absolute pinnacles of, you know, like what it means to be a human, what it means to be a creator. And I connected with Jason's work a while ago. And, you know, I think when I see what he's done, I think he is like the absolute best philosopher. And so his books, his writing, you know, like I always am just like so appreciative of what he's done. And I follow it very consistently. I have a very strong memory for seeing what he's done. So yeah, and then also I've got like other things I'm doing with his work. Like I've really done a great job of applying his work to the real world. Like I have real life experiences that follow not only Prometheus and Atlas, which led me to get LASIK. Like that book gave me the inspiration to get LASIK because it was showing how you can use technology to overcome your natural limitations, which was like a bias I had, you know, like I thought like, you know, nature was God, kind of like the Sophia principle was nature. And that was like what I had to like honor was like my own kind of limitations. And then that book actually inspired me to get LASIK on my 10,000th day of live. I figured out when that time is. It's when you're 27 and a half, something for our younger viewers. If you want to celebrate a special day in your life, look to when you turn 10,000 days old, which is somewhere in about your 27th year. And then anyways, so I now believe in the power of books and I read Jason and he lets me interview him. And it's just a tremendous honor.
Yeah, I bet it's a blast. I've listened to some of the interviews. Yeah, very true on the books. I think Gordon recently tweeted, pretend whenever you read a scripture or book that it was written for you, that the author had you in mind, and that's the truth. He did have you in mind. And as guest Charles Stein said, the text is the secret. There is an unknowable, sublime secret in these texts. You don't even have to try to be like everybody else and figure it out. What stirs within you is the secret to your journey. And as I say, sometimes or most of the time, you don't pick books. Books pick you. Or as Jung said, we don't pick our ideas. Ideas pick us, just like your ideas on the tarot. You are the vessel for something greater. So
I have thought that.
Unless, of course, you're a secret Nordic, and this is all some sort of game. But
giant psyop.
We'll figure you out before the end of the show.
You know, I think that's something I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna talk about. And I'm writing a new book right now. It's about the Nordics. That's about the next thing that's coming up. Yeah, I've got this really huge social movement that I've seen that's been spun. And anyways, if you want to look at it from an astrological perspective, that's the age of Aquarius right there. We have the, you know, the blonde figure in the tarot. It's this character. It's like a star. And that is the sign of Aquarius. And she's just a Nordic. So, you know, you have to be very careful when you're looking at this, because, you know, it's like they got the fish one and they all with Jesus, and then they also got the Aries one with Moses. So, you know, you kind of have to be ready for what's coming next. Okay, so to get real with the audience here, what we're talking about is the entire astrological system and the precession of the equinoxes. Okay, so which is the foundation of what I wrote. I wrote the book Arcane Arcade. It's a book that takes the tarot, turns it into these 22 hand gestures, because those are the 22 major archetypes of the tarot, which are the most important ones that you need to know in order to play the game of life. And it gives you basically like the rules of what these archetypes represent when you understand numerology. And numerology is basically like the code system in the game. I think of it as like chess, right? A lot of people are playing checkers, like God versus the devil. No, there's like so many other pieces that are involved. And numerology is like your master key for unpacking, you know, like what each different archetype does. And the tarot is like the master cipher of numerology. Okay. And that's something that's why I'm such a huge fan of the tarot, because each number makes so much sense. And then each one of my chapters really builds off the numerical principle and understanding what component of consciousness this represents. Some, you know, also like shout out to the Kabbalah, which also is like a Platonic system representing the way that each form from the original monad kind of like manifests itself. But what I'm going to is just that, okay, so there's these ages that the Earth's like tilt turns to, and like we're entering the age of Aquarius. But you know, my goal with this work is for people to not be beholden to any one age. I want people to have every single age in mind. Like we're entering the new aeon of Aquarius. You know, shout out to Aeon Bite. So happy to be on here. You know, that this idea of aeon is like the idea of like living time. And so I want everyone to have the ability to go to like any kind of consciousness, any kind of time. I want people to have like perspectivalism. And that means being able to put your awareness wherever, you know, you can imagine it would be, with like these different types of aeons that have gone past. And that's what my book is, mainly the goal, to educate people. But I made it into a game that people can do that's based upon the precession of the equinoxes. Okay. And so I'll just say what it is, and then we can get to the questions about what that is. Okay. But the game is essentially an elemental one. Okay. So all the 22 archetypes of the tarot have a hand gesture, right? And then you also have a like element that is with that hand gesture. And there's only 4 elements. Everyone knows these 4 elements. You know, fire, water, earth, and air. Okay. And so using the system of the precession of the equinoxes, which right now we're moving from Pisces, a water sign, into Aquarius, an air sign. Okay. That shows that Aquarius overcomes Pisces, which is really an air sign, which we'll talk about why that's an air sign, not a water sign, which some people think. Okay. It's associated with the sign of Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign. And then air beats water. And there's also a good physical reason for this. You know, like if I have a wet towel, how are you going to take care of that? I put a fan on it. Okay. That's the air drying out that water, or like bubbles. And then you can follow the system forward. Okay. Capricorn is the, you know, earth sign of like the devil, and that's going to bring down the air. That's why like the earth sign, like what happened with my wife, who is this amazing Capricorn figure, just brings the air signs right back down to earth. And then you have the fire sign, which is what overcomes that like baser element, you know, this is going to like consume the wood, the life force energy of the earth. Okay. And then that's the Sagittarius, which is what's before, you know, Capricorn. So you're working in reverse to what our normal yearly cycle is. But I found that this is what is the most true from the system that of my experience of it. And so by playing this game that I've created, you know, you get to literally live in this like kind of time sphere of I'm moving through these aeons by working with the principle of like transformation that's constantly happening. And there's a lot of other added benefits of this. Primarily, it's a system that allows me to teach you the archetypes of the tarot in a way that you can, you know, access more readily and then share with others, and hopefully overcome a lot of the biases that are associated with the tarot, like working with like magic woo cards, or like people don't want to get involved with all of that. This allows you to like jump right into a game. And then, on the side of it, the game itself is phenomenal. The game itself is a giant synchronicity system, so that when you play, maybe we'll play with Moondog and Miguel here. We can play this game, and then we can like learn about each other through the principle of synchronicity. Because whatever archetype you want to choose, Miguel, can you pull up the
Sure.
chart so the audience can finally see? I should have asked for that sooner.
All
Yeah,
right.
so this is my game map, and you can literally play the whole game off of this poster. Okay, so because
And
every
the
single
poster's in your book, right? So people
oh
know.
yeah,
Or
it's in the book. And then I forgot to say, it's also an app you can download for free now on the Play Store. Just type in Handmade Tarot Game. Links in this video. And so, yeah, this will allow you to like understand each one of the 22 gestures. And then based upon the color of the orb that the gesture is in, you can know what element that hand gesture, that archetype represents. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you can then see that the water takes over the fire, the earth takes over, fire over earth, earth over air, air over water, and so on. And so, yeah, it's a dual system. And I personally feel really excited about this because it's a game. And if you look at like where the tarot really came from, it's an absolute mystery. We think it's like the gypsy Romanian people, the Roma people who brought the tarot forth, but like maybe the knowledge is even older than that. And I've heard some sources, Israel Regardi, and then also Michael Tessarian. Michael Tessarian is my chief teacher on the tarot after like Crowley, like neck and neck, really. Saying that this type of system comes from ancient Egypt. And in particular, Alexandria. Again, virtual Alexandria, happy to be here. Apparently, the idea was that they knew that the Christians were like going to burn their setup. They saw the changing tides, that the gnosis of the ancient world was going to be overtaken by a new age. So what they did was they created this game, the idea of these images that would basically encode like an older understanding of before this present age took over. So they made it into a game so that it wouldn't be destroyed, so that people would play around with these archetypes and they would get seated in our unconscious till we were ready to like let them bloom. And that's what I'm trying to do today. I'm trying to basically incept the consciousness of the planet by giving people these like fun archetypal gestures that allow them to suddenly understand like the much bigger cosmic picture of what's going on here today.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, I love this quote at the beginning of your book. Using the tarot only for divination is like using a car only to store store gasoline. Sorry. So there is so much more to it. But to unpack it, especially, I read the book, so of course I'm getting it. But you say it's like a special type of rock, paper, scissors. How do we play this? Okay, how do I play this game? I need the poster, a deck,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
then
just
hand
the poster.
gesture. Or how do I?
So
give us
two ways to play, right? You can play, or three ways now that I have an app. First of all, we can play in this video. Okay, and everyone at home can play with this image right here. You just go TAR, and then on the O, you just make whatever hand gesture you want to make. Okay, and I just choose whatever one stands out to me. Okay, and that's why I consider this like a Rorschach test of your psyche. Okay, you make that gesture, and then someone else makes their gesture, and then you get to compare, the gestures. And from there, you get to see who won that little standoff and why. Okay. And from there, you get to like learn, like I'm supposed to learn from this person, or I'm supposed to teach this person the lesson of my archetype, depending on which one I chose. And then you can also play against the tarot itself. If you just put the 22 major arcana together, you can just flip up a card at the same time that you make the gesture. So now you can also use this as a way to play against the tarot, which actually makes every reading you possibly do like a double, like a dynamic reading of what I'm feeling versus what the tarot is teaching, and this supposes that maybe you could even teach the tarot something. If you beat the tarot, maybe this is your way of saying, I'm going to show the tarot what's really going on here today. And I believe that this is dynamic because, you know, there is no absolutes in life. Everything's in relation. So that's why I built this game. I want the tarot to be made anew. You know, I'm giving a new way of working with it. It's not the only way. I use tarot, you know, in lots of ways. This is just one of the ways. And then the third way you can play is by downloading my app, which then lets you play against the tarot, you know, on your phone. The tarot can play against you, or you can also use it with your friends, and it's a 2-player mode. But yeah, if you learn the poster here, you can play with a whole party of people. I've done that, where everyone in the party makes a gesture, and then I'm able to show, okay, you guys are together on this particular wavelength, and these people over here, this is their wavelength.
Well, okay, so how it would work? Let's say, for example, I'm playing Vance, and I do number 18. I do the white supremacy sign. Isn't that what it is today? Or
Okay,
whatever
you're
it is.
looking at 18.
I'll probably get banned for using it, but then Vance, he decides to do death.
Okay,
Oh,
so
wait a
yeah,
Who wins?
you're looking at
Who wins?
10 there is the Wheel of Fortune, which is by the way, white supremacy. Okay, it's the Gyan Mudra from yoga.
Yeah,
Okay, the
yeah.
OK
I do it all
symbol.
the time.
Yeah,
when I
and this
meditate.
symbol is really powerful. This is one of my most powerful chapters of my deck. I didn't know it was white supremacy symbol. It's actually the symbol of the app when you download it. So that's funny. But essentially, okay, you have death as a water archetype because it's a Scorpio sign, but also
Number
because
13, okay.
yeah, it's the idea that in order to get to the new life, you know, you need to first die, which is why people are baptized with water. It's kind of like washing away your old personality.
Right.
But the Wheel of Fortune is this air sign. It's associated with like Jupiter. It's also seen in the tarot as like, you know, like this wheel, this disc in the clouds. You know, it's kind of associated with like Ezekiel's vision of the wheel within wheel. So like a genuine UFO sighting. So this is what I correlate with the numeric principle of number 10, which represents like the greater order that emerges. And I consider this also a sign of technology. But basically, it's my way of saying that, you know, the technology of the Wheel of Fortune overcomes death. Like that's why we die. It's so that like we can go further. You know, it's an expansive force. That's what this idea of the air is that it's an expander and it leads to new experiences. And then the death archetype is more about like this transformational stage that we're in because of the nature of water to transform to like whatever vessel it's in. So in that sense, Miguel won, Moondog lost, and you know, Moondog gets to learn from Miguel in this instance that okay, whatever is holding me down, whatever I'm really thinking about with death right now, it's really teaching me to move forward into fortune. Right. Okay. And it could have been completely different. It could have been Miguel as like the magician, which is the snap gesture. Okay. And then, you know, Moondog was death. And that point, Miguel's like, okay, there's some things you can't magic your way out of. You know what I mean? And that's an important lesson for us to really connect deeper with our emotions because okay, this is again the part of the system of this. People are just thinking these air, water, fire, earth are just like these abstract elements, you know, like we just make them up basically or whatever. Well, they actually represent like the quintessence of man. The air is the social, intellectual element. The water is like the feeling, emotional side of your being that has to do with like love. The fire is like the spiritual, creative, like energetic side of you. And then the earth is like your grounded material reality. And so the idea is that by working with these archetypes all together, you actually get to like use each side of yourself more fully. Like I should be able to move from being all like charged up with my fire to, you know, also being able to like step back into my emotions and like be more real with myself and not try and overcome stuff and so on and so forth.
Great. Thank you. What do you think, Vance? Questions from you?
Number 19. Well, no, I think I see the annotation on that. 28. I guess, I'm sorry, is that 20? 20.
I might have to change that particular font. I liked how it's old school, but I'm seeing that you know, people sometimes now are reading it as not the number. Yeah, it's 20.
Yeah, the 0 looks a little bit like 8. So 20. I guess that's a dual one. Either it's fire and air or water and earth.
Yeah.
So
yep.
What happens when you pick
those?
That's
you're getting into the particulars, and this is an area that I had to create. 2 archetypes needed to be changed to a variable standpoint because the tarot is 22 total archetypes. And you can't break down 22 by 4. It's not divisible by 4, but 20 is, okay? So 2 cards needed to be given a special interpretation. And the 2 cards that got this were the Sun, okay, which is somehow I sent you the wrong gesture. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Miguel. This is an older plate. I should have given you. I made an update. I'm sorry, my audience. I was ill prepared for this because this book has gone through 2 previous editions, but in the most recent edition, I'm so sorry for this, you guys.
Oh, that's okay, no worries.
It's actually the Mithraic salute of showing your hand above your eye, like the military salute. It actually goes back to the worship of Mithra, which is the sign of the unconquerable sun. So please disregard number 19. If you go to my app, Handmade Tarot Game, in the Play Store, you can download this and it will have the correct sign. So sorry, everybody. But so anyways, the sun gesture, okay, the sun archetype can be any of the 4 elements, and you just determine it by what day it is in the yearly calendar. We're in the sign of Leo, okay? So Leo is a fire gesture, and so because it's the strength card, okay? And so that shows you that if you make the Mithraic gesture of the sun, okay, that's today, it's fire. And that means it beats all of the earth archetypes. It beats the devil, the fire. That's one of the great ideas. Like, okay, people are like scared of the devil or something. And it's like, nope, if you're strong enough, you can take the devil on. If you're like magical enough, you can beat the devil. That's what Faust was, like he's the magician. He beat the devil. Okay, so don't be afraid. You need to rise to that occasion. There's fire. Okay, so that's the sun archetype. Now the judgment archetype, okay, that's either up or down. Okay, if you point down, that indicates that you are making the gesture of water or earth. Okay, you can see in the glyph at the very center of this. Miguel, can you pull up the mandala I sent you?
Sure,
so people can get a full picture?
Is it this one or the next one?
That one.
No,
okay, so what you have here are the alchemical symbols for water and earth and air and fire. And basically with the judgment archetype, you make the hand gesture that's associated with these glyphs. If you point upwards, you're pointing upwards for fire and air. If you point downwards, you're pointing for water and earth. And these point up, like fire and air point up because they're both ascending energies. When you're embodying an air archetype, you're ascending. That's why I was like in the clouds in my youth. I'm like super intellectual, like so intellectual. It's, like way out there. And the same is true for people who are so fiery. They just can take on anything. They're also, it's an ascension energy. Whereas people who are more watery, if you're in the water archetypes, your astrology sign falls in one of the water signs or the earth. Okay, you're way more practically grounded. You're in the earth. Your energy is tending to go down into like the more creative side of life, where, it's more like interlocking. So anyways, that's what the judgment makes. Now, how does that work in my game? Essentially, you win if if your gesture you make is mirrored in your opponent. That's why I say this is the judgment card. If I have good enough judgment to guess, like Miguel, he's like the magician guy. I'm going to make this point up gesture. I'm going to point upwards, okay, right here, because I think that he's going to make a fire or an air sign. That's how he's feeling. That means that I would win if I guessed that correctly because I had good judgment. And we can, that chapter is like the most esoteric out of all of my books. So I'm glad I get to actually explain like what's going on there. And the same, but if I'm wrong, he's water or he's earth. Okay, I had bad judgment. I lost that little game. And essentially, it's like rock, paper, scissors. But it's like 2.0 to infinity because now there's like infinite meaning. Yeah. And, so that is how you work with that judgment card. I think the rest of the system is a lot more like simple than that to work with. But those are the 2 that are the most difficult. So they're kind of like the expert level of this. But, if you can just follow what I said, you would be able to do this every single time you play the game. If you can just understand like where the system is at. And it's like a letter system. Like my advice to the people watching this is that like the tarot is the alphabet of the unconscious archetypes. Okay. Everyone knows an alphabet. Okay, some people should know, like I know like the Nordic alphabet as well. You can get to know the tarot one through this work, which gives you like the philosophical grounding principles of each of these archetypes based upon their numerology. You learn this is like an alphabet. And yeah, that this learning of the alphabet of like the stars is in my intro, because if you this is something I discovered. I'm a father, and I made this game a lot for like kids as well, because I want children to have this system. I hope that parents learn this and teach this to their kids, so that way the kids can be kind of like given the container of the tarot to work with. Personally, I entered with this like Lyme's disease story, and the tarot helped me, but I didn't say how it helped me. So what actually happened was the tarot is considered to be like a living temple. That's what Aleister Crowley says. It's like the cards themselves are alive, and they build like a nomadic cathedral. That's something that Alejandro Jodorowsky calls this, like a place that you can build anywhere you anywhere you are within yourself to have this like, ascension. Anyways, the value though of this for me is what I'm trying to say is that the tarot is like a container. It allows you to take all of your psychic energies and put them within this deck of cards. It's like a complete mirror system, and it includes the devil archetype, the dark shadow, the scary. But suddenly you have it on the table, and it's connected to these other cards, and it's not suddenly like working in the shadows to direct your life, and you calling it fate, like Carl Jung said. Now you have this like is out there, and this allows you to really get further into like your own self, because no longer are you being as controlled. So anyways, I lost track because I saw a comment, but anyways,
sorry about that, but yeah, wanted to people sending you some love from the Chatico. I wanted to include that so you don't miss it.
I love the appreciation. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah,
but anyway,
let me take all the hate mail for it, Jeff. You get all the good mail.
No, I really do appreciate that. I was trying to say that this is something that the kids can learn. So yeah. I forget where I was going with that.
It's I think it's great. Again, might do it with my kids again. Sometimes I don't understand my wife. She's an Orthodox Catholic, and I'm worried about everybody going to hell. But she does my tarot readings, and then
serious?
She does my tarot readings, and now she's with my daughter watching Charmed. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, right. No, I was raised in Catholic for 13 years. I went to Catholic private school, and so yeah, like I feel like that kind of religion like definitely has like the magical side.
Yeah, there's a wiggle room to slip in some cool stuff. So yeah, awesome. Does that make sense to you, Vance? Again, I read the book. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
Very much. I'm familiar. I read the Book of Thoth, and I know Crowley's work on his deck several times. I got a couple of Crowley decks, and so I'm familiar with these concepts of the major arcana being the representatives of subconscious archetypes and so forth. It's all true. It's all true. My book.
Yeah, and like Jeff writes, this is I like it. It's a guidebook to the self. Again, that's what it is. I mean, what we all want. I mean, what did Crowley himself said? The most important thing in life is to make contact with your holy guardian angel. And you can say the holy guardian angel is simply our daemon, our higher self. It's who we are. It's what we're, our true will, if you would. So this allows us, it makes it easier, or it's an avenue to understand who we truly are, right, Jeff?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's really the gnosis that I was like leading to with the introduction. I am all about selfhood. I honestly can't see enough talk about the literal like value of selfhood. So that's what I would like to see from this, is that people raise their consciousness up. I have 2 chapters that talk about selfhood very seriously. Yeah. The one that gets it the most though is the moon chapter, number 18. Which is, if you add up the 1 and the 8 together through the principle of like that gematria reduction, you get to 9, the hermit. which is really you being with yourself. And so, you know, for me, that moon card really represents the journey of individuation. So if you are curious about the kind of the pitfalls of that and like the rewards, you got to go look at, you know, what that moon archetype represents, because that's really about you kind of like communing with like yourself, like, you know, when just the moon is up and it's just you, you know, you're like in the dark, then you're with yourself. You know, from my own experience, for example, like when I was going to say that essentially the tarot gave me the container for my darkness of the Lyme's disease. Like I got all the way to the very bottom level of reality. And then I wasn't scared anymore, because here's what happens when you have all these boogeymen that you're scared of. Then like are the thing that you're most afraid of. You are that eternal, you know, force that you're working with. So yeah, I really, really hope that people get from this book, you know, the idea of selfhood. But I am right, like after I complete my Closer Encounters book, I'm going to be writing a book that's called Atlas the Self. And that will be like my own kind of like understanding of the archetype of Atlas, which Jason Reza Giorgiani puts up in his Prometheus and Atlas as the archetype of the self. Because I don't think there's any image that we have like in our collective unconscious that is more like emblematic of what it means to be a self than it is to see Atlas holding up the world, because there's just no image that's more like against the idea of the group, you know, like that's really what we're dealing with here. From like our worldview perspective is like each of us has to figure out our own reality. And what really complicates that is when we have other people telling us what to believe or who we are. And the same is true when we tell other people what to do and who they should be, as a kind of like delay mechanism from going on this individuation journey, which is like cosmic. It's a, you know, it confronts you really deeply to like open up to like who you really are beyond all the conditioning. And so, yeah, that's what I think of as like true gnosis, because, you know, I like the definition of gnosis that I've got from Peter Carroll's book, like the Chaos Magic book, where he's like, gnosis is just like when you're like completely focused in on this thing, when you have like no distractions whatsoever, you're like completely one with whatever you're doing. And I think that to me is like very indicative of the self, because how could you be more one than when you're totally yourself? So in that way, I think of the self as like the goal and like the journey of this whole process.
That's the fool's journey, right? Through the spheres, through the various stages, and through where we need to go to find who we truly are. I mean, what did Jung say? The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't answer, it will tell you. So have a little urgency, because the world is always trying to tell you who you are, and it's not the real you.
Yeah, it's good to follow those clues, right? That's how I did this. I was curious, you know, and you definitely get the idea that like the world is trying to reach out to you. So like you know, in the tarot game that I built, the Fool gesture is the opening one of the tarot. Okay, it's archetype 0. It's the very foundational archetype of the tarot. It's the most important like esoteric truth you can understand is our idea of the Fool at 0. And I have it as like the wave. And I bring this up because, like I said, like sometimes the universe is like almost like waving at you, okay, to like, hey, like wake up and notice me. And so when I put this in the very beginning of my book, like that's the Fool is this wave. I'm basically implying like the Fool teaches us that like life's a game, you know. It's like the Fool, most people actually already know this card from the playing card deck, which was derived from the tarot, and this is where it's the Joker. Okay, so the Fool represents like the wild man archetype, which is why, you know, April Fool's Day is like in spring. And so like in spring, it's like that's when the energies of nature are suddenly coming up. He's wearing a green like shawl thing, this crazy outfit. And so then he represents like the new life of nature, kind of like overcoming the cold of winter, which you can actually see now. I'm seeing this for the first time. Oh yeah, that's like the winter mountains are being melted by the sun. And so this really represents like the mountains of like our rationality. which is where the idea comes that like only madness can save you, like from like that's the only way that you can be saved from, like the constraints of Urizen, which is William Blake's like demiurge. Okay, so you need to have like this imaginative worldview to like break yourself free. And so, yeah, the Fool represents this consciousness because, he's the number 0. He's like, the Fool doesn't fit in anywhere. Okay. That's like, this whole like in-group, out-group thing. Like that's what killed Christ, the in-group, out-group problem. People like trying to like fit into a certain group. And then they're like, you don't belong to my group and you threaten my group. Okay. So then I got to kill you. Well, like the Fool archetype is like, represents the inner child that we all have to like just play around and have fun. But also the even deeper level of that is like the cosmic truth at very 0, that there is no meaning. Okay. Like ultimately in life, there's no real point to any of this that we're doing, except maybe just to have fun and to go on your own journey, to like make up your own stuff. Because if there was ever an actual purpose to life, it would actually impede your ability to like have free will, because everything in your life would just be telling you, go do this one thing, which is why I made it like the gesture of the Fool is like a wave. It's a friendly thing, it's like maybe like, hey, your true will is over here. Do you see me? Like, I'm not slapping you to go do it. I'm not poking you to go do it. I'm just waving. And then in my book, I was really proud of this. Like what you understand is that the open hand gesture like this is actually beyond duality, because it can mean both that like I'm willing to like receive something, like, hey, I'll take that. Or it can be like, I'm giving you something, like, hey, I'm going to give you a good hand. I'm going to give you my hand here. So it represents like the embodied reality of like, that's beyond the mental paradigms of like, receiving or like taking, of like giving or receiving, so then that open hand is like your own like way to understand that there is a reality that's beyond duality, and that is the Fool.
Well said indeed.
Yeah. One thing I liked about your app on the mobile is the learn mode, where you can actually see each card and get a description, some quotes from people about the cards in the learn mode. So there's game and the learn mode. I like that.
Yeah, I gave the book away for free. That's the fun thing. Okay. I wanted people to have this so bad that I just put the entire book I wrote, which is 150 pages. There's additional material where you can actually turn this game system into a board game, which is on my actual Amazon book. You can see there's like more if you want to play like a really serious board game. You can like then use the hand gestures to like win points in the archetypes and then like take them away from people if you like can charge into other people's territory. There's a game map that you can print out and stuff. But with the Fool there, what I was glad about was like, okay, people can have the entire book for free off of the internet, like you can just download this. And this is my way of saying I want the whole world to have this, but this is also for me kind of like my love letter to the Fool. That this Fool archetype is really personal to me in my own journey, because growing up I was like the class clown, and like I made people laugh like crazy. Like anyone who had me like around, like I could make them laugh. But I was also very self-deprecating too, because I just didn't see the point of like trying to pretend to be something I'm not. Like I'd rather like make you laugh by like making fun of myself than it would be for me to, try and fit in. And then that as a kid, I didn't realize that I was extremely alienated by this. But it turns out that alienation and like basically having no friends growing up, this allowed me to come to like myself so much faster in my life. I came to myself at such a young age, and I'm now in the country living off on my own in my own kind of world, basically with my family now, my wife and my kid. But like I was willing to go on that journey at a very early age because I understood the energy of that Fool so fundamentally that that's where the true life force is. It's in humor. It's in, unpretentiousness. And so I think that the book being free aligns it with the energy of the Fool. this full card because he's 0. He represents the, you know, primal spark of creation, which is chaos, which is everywhere. And so that's my way of saying, okay, I want this book to be everywhere. I want this to be something that's as common as rock, paper, scissors, but for people who are actually interested in playing a game that has more than just 3 rules.
Well said indeed. Yeah. And very excited about it. Yeah, but right now you can't get it on iPhone, right?
No, anyone who wants to make a donation to my, you know, Patreon, which is something you can find in the app, I will get it. I will just like put it away, and I will outsource this to iPhone. I actually had a great experience with getting outsourcing for someone to build this app. If anyone's interested in having an app built, I'll just, you know, I'll like, if you just reach out to me, which there's a couple of ways you can do it through this video, for example. You probably will have like a link or something to my own YouTube channel, which is the Quest On channel, which is a pun on the idea of the word question. But if you remove the I from question, you have Quest On. And then that's my way of saying the greatest question in life is, who am I? And then that's why it's like an eternal quest that you're constantly on, the quest on. You know, which actually goes to this whole idea of the Ankh, by the way. I don't know if we talked, if you ever get to this in your school, but you know, Aleister Crowley, he emphasized that the meaning of the Ankh in, you know, like the ancient Egyptians was like, the actual translation of Ankh is sandal strap. And that represents the idea of like the Ankh is like a shoe that you can like, you know, just keep to propel you forward. So the Ankh represents the 5th element, which is spirit. And so that way you can just keep going on. And so, yeah, anyone who donates to my Patreon gets to like, I'll just save that money and just use it to outsource to getting someone to build the app for Apple, for iPhones, so that everyone can have it on that sphere as well. I just happen to have Android and I don't have any Apple products, but like obviously I hear they're pretty great. So I'd love to make that more available so that it's available like no matter what you got, you can still have this.
Cool. Look forward to it. Yeah, for when I do look at the statistics, I don't know what it says about this show, but yeah, like 60% of the listeners on podcasts listen through Apple iTunes. So
yeah,
it's an iPhone friendly crowd for Aeon Byte. I don't know what that means.
Well, sorry, Aeon
Byte.
Byte.
I have an iPhone simply because years ago I picked one up and it's what I'm used to. I could care less about.
Right. Well, I got given a smartphone. Just for instance, this is cool about me. I went for up until a few months ago, I didn't have a smartphone. I had been working in this world with just a, you know, like little flip phone. I had just been going completely without that for years, you know, and then just like someone gave me an Android, and then I was like, okay, well, I'll just use this. But if you're, you know, if you want to, you guys like just find like a free like Android device or like a really cheap one. And then this is my plug for something that's cool about Android to like, okay, you don't want to just do it just for my thing, but if you do have an Android and you go to the Play Store and you type in the word PlantNet, one word, PlantNet, you get a free app that'll let you identify any plant-based. And I've used this app to basically become like a master herbologist in my area. Like I know like all the plants around me and I know what they do because once you know the name of those plants, you can just look them up on Google. And so then you could become a master herbologist. That's on my channel, by the way. Like I've used this to treat stuff. And it's like, that's a great, I don't know if iPhone has a free one, but okay, there it is on Android. So, and then I'll take any donations and I'll just put it towards getting it set up on iPhone for free. Okay. That's all.
Awesome. We look forward to it when it's ready. Yeah. And as far as super chats, Chester, thank you for your donation. I know you
man.
have enjoyed you've enjoyed Jeff's game. So
thank you so much.
And yeah, very cool. And more or less a little on a side tangent. You seem to be pretty positive about the age of Aquarius and about humanity's direction.
Yeah.
So maybe could you, because then again, you put some zingers on. Here's directly from your book. The difference between genius and stupidity is genius has its limits, Albert Einstein. And another one that jumped up: the only way to comprehend what mathematicians mean by infinity is to contemplate the extent of human stupidity. Voltaire. So, I mean, your book has a lot, and it takes a lot of views of things. So, but what
Yeah.
is you think we're things are getting better, as the Beatles saying?
You know, I like I'll just start with the quotes and about stupidity, for example. To me, I think that we those quotes are actually tied to the Fool chapter. Okay. And then the Fool is zero, like I've been saying, the numerology principle of zero, which is actually infinity. Okay. Because if you look at the word of infinity, it really means unfinite. It's
Mm,
not definable within the bounds of finite reality. And that's the same thing of zero. Okay. Approaches infinity, it's almost like zero in its like incomprehensibleness, you know. So that's where that came in from. And I am positive about like the future, because I think that we can do anything. And I think that there is like a progressive like thing that's happening right now. That's like the journey of the tarot, the Fool's journey is a progressive experience that we are on as a society. And the idea of the progressive mentality is really fundamental to like Jason Giorgiani's work, where Zarathustra is like history's first philosopher, because while everybody else is like worshiping gods because they were like strong or sexy enough to make like rain or like crops grow, he was like the god of the gods is wisdom.
mm,
And then he said the main attribute of this wisdom god is that he has a progressive mentality. He like made everything so that it would grow.
right.
And so I think that the actual truth of wisdom, like, which is like the basis for like the organizing principle of our reality, there's also chaos, but there's this organizing principle is wisdom, and that is progression. So yeah, I think that the age of Aquarius has like a lot of potential. It might not be perfect, but like I'm hoping that we can become meta aware enough to not be deceived into believing it's just one kind of reality. I try and adopt multiple predict like views on reality within this book, because you basically it's through this perspectival strife that you get creativity. Okay, so like I'm all about selfhood. I think that to be real in this world, you have to make a stand against against this idea of the collective, which is
Mhm.
like the entire like sum of humanity trying to like tell you who you are, what you can be. That's the matrix right there. Okay, like the archons, we're a part of it. If you're a part of that system of telling people what they can be or can't be, you're also accepting that. That's the feedback loop. And like altruism is like the programming matrix of that. That's the glue. Okay, that's what I understand. And once you deprogram altruism, you're very quickly on your way to freeing yourself to become a real human being, which is where this idea of enlightenment comes from. Okay, the idea of enlightenment is like literally dropping like the baggage so that you're a lighter human being. Okay, so that's like for me, what I'm trying to say is like I believe in love too, though. Like the age of Pisces. Okay, in my most recent video, you see, I explain that the age of Pisces, which is the age that Jesus was started with, his teachings about like love the neighbor as yourself, and like his Sermon on the Mount, where things are like totally paradoxical, like the meek shall inherit the earth, and the other impossibilities of all of this. What it really boils down to is astrology, because if you look at what Pisces is in the sky, it's the two fish that are chasing each other's tails. And so what this really shows is that like, okay, there is no separation between the two, because in the zodiac, the Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, because then it's Aries, which then starts the new cycle. But the idea of putting the fish at the very end basically shows that it's like the beginning and the end are one and the same. And so with that teaching, I'm also like encouraging us to have the kind of love that could be totally free flowing and expansive. And I actually believe that that kind of love can happen when people drop altruism. Like that is way more possible when you're not being held down by these expectations. Because once you love yourself, once you have self-love, you can do anything, because now you're not like suddenly waiting till someone enters the room for you to show love. You know, you're in love all the time. You can have that reality. And then once it's for you, once you have that feeling inside yourself, then you can, you know, more give this to everyone else around you. And so in my book, I got these competing views where I'm like, okay, selfhood is really fundamental to having psychic sovereignty and, like, you know, even like hygiene. You know, you got other people's viewpoints in the back of your head telling you what to think about all these things. And that's where you get confused. And, you know, that's why the very beginning of the selfhood journey is just learning your own vibration. That's got to be the very start. And I believe that being fearless is the quickest way to go there. To get that, just drop fear. That's the quickest thing you can do on your journey. Don't do fear. That is like the glue of altruism too, by the way. Like beneath the altruism, it's fear, you know, that people aren't going to be able to do this or that, you know. And then once you're beyond that state, then you're going to be realizing all of these incredible powers like the Atlas archetype. And then you're going to be able to lift it up reality for everyone else and be like, okay, it's up here, everyone. It's not where you've been looking. It's this is the vibe, you know?
Well said indeed. Very well said. And for the audience, yeah, his book not only, again, he deals with a lot of issues and speculations. Again, I love when he talks about obviously archetypes and possibilities for humanity, and of course the tarot too. But like there is one part, I think you're talking about the emperor, and then you give us a little warning. You say, did you know America's first colonies, Jamestown and Plymouth, were communistic? No private property was allowed in Jamestown, and everyone had to work together. 80% of the population died in 2 years. And as the archaeological and historical record tells us, there are survivors resorted to eating one another to survive. So that's a word. I'm sure Vance is happy because Vance is always likes to hear the truth about socialism in these movements, right,
yeah.
man? Like,
don't like
more
it.
proof.
Yeah, that book is I believe I put a citation in the book. Who is the author on that? Did I put that? If it's not there, it's from a book called Crushing the Collective. And that was the first like major reveal to me, like, okay, yeah, socialism disincentivizes people from, you know, like stepping out on their own and taking care of their own needs. You know, it kind of like is supposed to like work without the selfishness of humanity, whereas like selfishness is somehow like a bad term, you know, where it's like, okay, in my world, the more selfie you are, not like taking pictures on the internet selfie. I mean, like the more you are yourself, like that's the more unique you are. That's the more like courageous you are to stand up and be something different. You know, this is why I'm against like the idea that you need another group of people to validate your identity. You know, like if you're lucky in this world, if you get like 2 or 3 people who really get you, and if you want any more than that, you're being psycho, because that's just the world that we live in. What really counts is if you got people who really, you know, are willing to ride or die with you, not whether people, you know, are willing to just kind of like follow whatever you say about whatever your identity is. Like that's where I'm saying in that emperor chapter, for example, the emperor represents like the alpha masculinity, the alpha spirit, you know, masculine, like the masculine that can be in women as well, you know, where it's like, okay, I don't like something about the world I live in. I'm going to go off and change that world, you know, like I'm going to go off and take charge, and I'm not going to listen to what other people say. So that's why the archetype of the emperor is associated with the astrological sign of Aries, which is like that driving force of like the new spring, which is when the April Fool's Day takes place. It's from March 21st to April 20th. So that's why I'm saying, hey, you know, that's your spirit. That's the fire archetype. And by the way, just so we're like, oh, here's an archetype. It's that this is it. The thumbs up gesture. And we don't have it right now in our slides, but if you do look up the Rider-Waite image of the emperor, he actually is holding a giant ankh in his hand. And I write in my book that ankh is literally like his thumb. Okay, so the thumb of the emperor comes up. And so in palmistry, so I studied palmistry before I wrote this book. So I knew the principles of hand reading, which Alexander the Great used. He was given a book on reading palmistry from his teacher, Aristotle. And he used this palmistry to determine who would be his generals. He understood, and that's because your hands are literally like the place in your body where they're the most neurons from your head to anywhere else in your body. It's to your hands. And so that's why Goethe, the German poet who wrote Faust, he said that the hands were the brain externalized. And so I'm saying that in palmistry, which is the science of like understanding people through their hands, your thumb represents the will. Okay, so in the emperor chapter, I make it so like, okay, this is the gesture of the emperor. It's thumbs up. Okay, because that's what it is in this life. It's how big your thumb is. How hard are you willing to grab it? You know, how far are you willing to push it with your thumb? Because the thumb is how you grab life. And some palmistry, it's just reading the thumb. That's it. Okay, and then here's this amazing synchronicity in the tarot. The other card that I have is the thumbs down gesture is death. Okay, you know, like it's like the Colosseum. The emperor chooses thumbs down, thumbs up. Technically, they did the opposite, but we're going ever. It's popular consciousness now that this means that he's gonna die. But you know, okay, so that's archetype 13. You know, unlucky 13. It's death. Okay, if you add up 1 and the 3, it's 4, which is the emperor. And this teaches you that that's the real reason why we die, is because you're meant, like the reason why we like lose the life that you're in right now is so that you can have the eternal empire of continuing the expansion of your consciousness. That's what we're here to do. We're here to create the empire of the light, which is that emperor thing. So, and that's also why death is like its own imperial force. And we have so many archetypes of like the dead emperor, like Darth Vader, or like the Night King from like Game of Thrones, or like the Dracula, who's like the head of the emperor of the undead army. It's because we understand there's this intrinsic relationship between death and the emperor, you know?
Well said. Yeah, I love what you said about the hands. It reminds me of that movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance. Yeah, Vance. Yeah, it's based on the Bhagavad Gita, and written by Stephen Pressfield. And of course, you have the Will Smith character who's like the Krishna, and he's trying to teach the Matt Damon character how to golf. And he says in one part that I love, it says, "Your hands have more wisdom than your brain will ever have." So that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. You know, one of the teachers of mine was a classical design like professor who taught people how to do classical drawings, like at the level of like engineering, and also like using the sacred geometry that's behind art. And he said like your hand embodies like all of these different, you know, realities of like phi, you know. And so like if you can understand the hidden ratios that are in your hand, it's like that's like the map of the universe in some ways.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Part of the Adam Cadman or Primal Man, or yeah, those again, back to the world of archetypes, if you would. Do you see the trickster in the fool archetype, or where do you see the
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what the trickster is. I mean, you know, it's the trickster, the fool is the joker, the joker is the trickster. You know, I love the trickster archetype. I mean, to me, it's all that humor and, you know, being willing to like literally confront anything with the kind of like dose of irreverence. I mean, that to me, that's like sexy, you know, like someone who's willing to just kind of like what the fuck, I don't care, you know, like it's just kind of like bouncing off the walls. And to me, this trickster archetype is actually ethical. Like it's like, if you know, when you look at the many different sides of like what the trickster is, people look at like the ontological sides, you know, or like there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. But then there's also the ethical aspect of the trickster, which I've claimed from the tarot's teaching being the very first, is foundational. And so in my mind, in a lot of situations in life, being a fool, being a joker, being a trickster is actually like an ethical imperative. Because say like someone comes up to you and they're going to like harass you and they're going to be like mean to you and they're bringing to you this like this anger vibe and this judgmentalness, or they want to take something from you. But then you're going to be like, hey, I'm the fool. I'm going to do something totally unexpected here. And I'm just going to like break your mind for a second here. I'm going to do something that's actually crazy. I'm just going to like go that direction. And what's going to happen is people are going to suddenly feel like I was in control of the situation. And now I don't know what's going on, because this craziness is actually a more fundamental force in existence than like lust or like greed or these other types of aspects that we consider to be more base human emotions. The basis of them all is just total craziness. And so being, you know, having that ability to just kind of be like, I'm like, whatever, like that, people don't even want to mess with that. No one wants to even start, you know? So to me, that's like an ethical thing as well. That's why we want to like work with the fool energy, is just to completely break down that kind of like structure. And you don't do it, I guess, for the whole world. You do it for yourself first, because you just free of the permission here. Go do whatever, right?
Indeed. For some reason, I'm getting the urge to listen to Steve Miller. But yes, chaos is a ladder. It always has been. Vance, any questions from you or the audience? I think Chester was the only super chat so far.
Yeah, you know, here's something that always bugged me that you mentioned earlier. Aquarius is an air sign, and yet everything about it says it's a water. You know, it's got to do with water and carrying the water and pouring water. Does that mean that Aquarius has kind of a what would you say, a misrepresentation of itself? I mean,
It's a, you know, it's a possibility. But if you actually say the word Aquarius out loud, you'll actually find that the second word in there is air. Arius. Okay. And so it's actually an air sign. And in my book, I talk about why this is. And it's essentially the water that's being poured out is like manna. It's like intellectual, like the cosmic sense. It's a cosmic sign. And so, yeah, you actually, you can see a lot of that, like it's pouring out the water, you know, onto the environment around it. But it's basically what it's doing is it's raising the vibration of that area. Yeah, I can see still though why people might have difficulty accepting it, but I guess
it's the only
if you
sign
ever,
that's like that, right? What other signs? It's the only sign that's like that. What other signs are, you know, are not representing themselves as at their nature as their outward appearance?
They're not wearing drag.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, I have to refer to my major teacher on the tarot, Michael Tessarian, who kind of links a lot of this work back to the like ancient Celtic roots, and he talks a lot about how like these archetypes have gone through some like gender changes. So, for example, like Virgo, you know, it's like it's both supposedly it's the hermit in the tarot, but it's also the like the earth sign, you know, of the hermit and the Virgo are together, you know. And so yeah, like he infers that like originally the hermit archetype, which we see as an old man with an old white beard, was actually like kind of like the old woman. You know, like it was probably a time not so long ago in our civilization when we recognized that the old woman had like the real like cryptic knowledge of being the helper on our journeys. And he also does the same too with like the devil, which comes up in my book a little bit, where I write about, if you look in my devil chapter, hey, here's a fun one. This is the devil, everybody. It's got your nose. Okay. This is like so funny. If you're curious about why that's there, it's like, okay, you think the devil, if you really believe the devil is real and it's going to get you, it's no different than you being like a tiny child and looking at like an adult who like has your nose and you're like, oh, give me my nose back. You know, it's like, no, the devil can't take your soul. You are your soul, you know? And the same applies for like all of, you know, like what's happening with like marketing today, where people are trying to like fool you into, you know, buying their products by believing you're lacking something within yourself. And this again shows my my system of the air sign being trumped by the earth sign. Okay, you know, the fool is beaten by the devil, obviously. So yeah, the point there was that the hermit, you know, that there's all these different gender crossovers, and the devil likewise is a female energy. You know, it's not like that it's not as male as a lot of the other signs are. So a lot of these used to be female.
But you associate the hermit with the self.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, mutable earth is generally what it means, the mutability of earth. And yeah, I was really excited. I kind of was like, I did some riffing on this. I write the whole book. I spend a lot of time working through these chapters and these different archetypes. But essentially, I suggest that the hermit ends up being the spiritualized earth, because it's literally the completion of what earth is ever supposed to be. There's like, okay, there's 4 elements in astrology. Everyone can figure out what theirs is. But then you should also kind of know what like variation of it. You have cardinal, which like initiates the sign. You have fixed, which is the heraldic elements that most people are familiar with from like the Bible. You know, in my Catholic church, they had it on the Bible, the four beasts, like the eagle, which is Scorpio, Leo, the lion, Taurus, the bull, and then the angel, Aquarius. Okay, and then that's the fixed element of those signs. And then the last one is the mutable, which shows like, okay, after that stage of being fixed, now the sign can be kind of like its completion. It can go on to the next. And then in the case of Earth, it's Virgo. And then so I thought, okay, with the hermit archetype, essentially at the highest level of that archetype, you actually have the idea of like the mirror. Okay. And that's what it means, like to be of the greatest service is almost like if the Earth is suddenly becomes like a mirror for the sun. Okay, that would be like the ultimate level of like us embodying the deepest esoteric truth, is that like if everyone on this whole planet were to like suddenly wake up and like realize that they have internal light, they've been collecting all of this light from the sun, and this light wants to express itself everywhere, and then suddenly we're just going to be bouncing off the walls with that light. And so yeah, that's that would be for me the hermit as the self, where that's like that is the purpose of the self, is to be like this mirror, you know, to show you who you really are. Yeah,
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense indeed. All right, well, as we get towards the end, I wanted to, for those of you who are watching, I wanted to show quickly the Jeff's website, the app site. Let's see if I can pull it here without an accident here. It's been a little wonky lately. There it is. So I hope you guys can see it. There is the Handmade Tarot Game on the Google Play. Yeah, he's got the white supremacy sign there. I better shut up or else Google's going to shut me down for you if I keep repeating that.
I just want to say though, against that, like I have a mohawk. People might think like and a shaved head to some extent. So people might think, oh, I'm into that. Nope. I believe like I believe that the human race is like the metals, you know, like the white metal has a particular strength to it, and then the black metal and the Asian and all this other stuff. I think that if you mix them together, you're probably going to get a stronger alloy that comes out of it. You know, maybe, and there's certain benefits to like having different levels of it. You know, it's like, obviously you shouldn't be all mixed right away. You know, there should be different levels of everything all together. Cause I think that everyone has different strengths. I used to play World of Warcraft when I was younger, and, you know, each race in World of Warcraft had a different racial passive, and some races have different passives that I think are really cool. I think that, and so that's for me, I take a strength-based perspective to everything. I look at the strengths that are there, not the weaknesses. You know, there's a certain strength to whiteness. There's a certain strength to blackness. You know, like there's these different levels. They're all there together. And I would really hope before we wrap this up that we could play a game. I feel like that's really been something that I'd like to just allow us to do, because if you could pull up the game chart too, so that our audience can, you know, see what our choice is. So just take a moment here, you two, Miguel and Moondance, just kind of like look at this chart and just kind of feel whichever one stands out to you. And then I'm going to do TAR, and then on the word O, if you'll just make the hand gesture with me on the screen, we can just play this game and figure out what each one of us is doing. And so, are you ready?
I am ready. God, I didn't see the Vulcan hand gesture. I was already thinking of
Oh
that.
my gosh,
Or
that would have
they-
been so smart if I had done that for one of them.
yeah.
That'd have been hilarious. Okay,
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 I'm ready.
On Star or
ready.
something.
Okay,
Right.
ready. TARO. Okay, I can't quite see you. So, Miguel, both you and me did strength. So we're together on the strength, but ultimately Moondog wins. And I want to say that this makes sense to me. Okay, so
What?
both
The
me and
hippie beats
Miguel.
the hippie beats Black Power? No
Yeah, no,
way. How
you
that
gotta respect the system here. Okay, so me and Miguel are both in the strength
Nixon.
vibe. We're both like, I'm obviously popping off with like my excitement right now, so I'm all fire. I couldn't hide that, obviously. But Miguel too, like this is his show. I'm really happy that I got to be on here. He chose strength because he's feeling strong in this, and I'm glad for him. But ultimately, Moondance, he chose. I'm sorry, Moondog. Moondance is my
That's
cat.
your cat, right?
Sorry.
What's your cat? What did your cat do?
Oh God, I don't know.
He does this.
He skedaddled once I started talking, and once the petting wasn't
Isn't
like
that a Van
full
Morrison
focus, right?
song? Isn't
Oh
Van
yeah,
Morrison
So
Moondance.
sing
Oh yeah.
Moondance?
yeah, so Moondog here, he's got the high priestess, which is the 2. Okay, so if you look at the high priestess card, she's always behind, in between these 2 pillars, which represent like the light and dark or mind and matter sides of creation. And she's associated with silence. She's associated with like the gestational property of the universe. She's like the womb of the great mother, that's like holding that space, like and doing that. And to be honest with you, it's really fun for me to get that, because like there's so much more I want to talk about with this all going on. But like in this instance, it was like the silence that ultimately wins. And that's like really comforting for me, because it's like I could never say enough about this. But ultimately, it's really the sacred journey is going to be in that quietness of like going interior. And so we, both Miguel and I, the kind of the most like the longest talkers of the 3 of us, obviously I'm going on, but we are being taught to be quiet. And so
Why
for
does
me,
Vance? How does
yeah.
Vance beat us? That's I'm not understanding.
How
It's
does he
just
beat
being
us?
me,
Oh, because water trumps fire.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
water.
Yeah. I see what
Okay,
you're
okay,
asking.
that makes
Oh,
sense.
I'm sorry. I guess again, I'm just like, whoop, that's where my mind is. So please, Vance, if there's anything that you would have to say, like why you felt drawn to this, or like what about the high priestess comes to mind as a tarot enthusiast yourself?
Well, it's a Sophia Alethea type of archetype.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about it. It was spontaneous, just something I felt. Didn't
Yeah.
think about it too much.
Yeah, and I guess that really does correspond with like that water element of like intuition,
Hmm.
just kind of going with the flow, which is what all of the blue gestures do represent, actually, which I'm really pleased about. The ones that came out as water are all about going with that flow. Like the chariot archetype, which I got is literally like the rock and roll gesture, right? That's like going with the flow gesture. And in my book, I kind of like made this really cool association that the 7 of the chariot implies that it's the present moment. That's what it means to be in the chariot, is to be in the present moment, because there's actually 7 wheels of time: seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years. You put that all together and you got 7 cycles of time. And so, that to me shows that like being in the present moment is ultimately what the teaching of the chariot is all about. And that's arguably one of the most like fundamental aspects of the entire tarot, is this chariot archetype, because it represents the 7. And if you look at the final card of the tarot, it's the 21. So it's really 777, which equals 21. And so it's kind of like represents the perfection of like being completely embodied in the present moment. Because the more you are in the present moment, the faster time starts to go. If you can literally drop like the past and the future, you can find that time can just speed up so fast. You can literally get thrown from it, like a chariot. And so that card involves 2 sphinxes. And I kind of suggest that they are the mirror images of the past and the future. As much as you're living in the past or as much as you're living in the future, they are like kind of reverse images of one another.
Cool. Yes, and you said blue, so yeah, you definitely brought up the rock star. So we're talking about Elvis. You and I were emailing last night because I had forgotten that. Yeah, Tom Petty is was an Elvis fanatic.
Yeah, we're nuts about Tom Petty over here. I mean, just
Yeah.
absolutely loving his vinyl records. Just getting super deep into it. Is there any other questions that like Vance that you have? I would love to know more because you seem to know more about the tarot. Like, is there anything that comes to mind?
Trying to think. The tower.
Yeah,
Tell us about the tower, the blasted tower, and
the
right.
blasted tower. Yeah, so Jung,
Yeah.
right? We like Jung on this podcast. I'm a huge Jung fan. You know, he was all about the self. And one of the things that Jung says in his dream interpretation is that the self in dreams is often symbolized by like a house. That's like the kind of like self you have will be kind of like
Oh
indicative of the
yeah.
house. And
Right.
so, you know, in the original rendition, like the tower is also called like the mansion of God, right? And so what we're actually looking at right here of this blasted tower is like the breakdown of like egoic consciousness. It's less about the breakdown of egoic consciousness than it is like what comes after as well. This is something I've learned since like writing this, is that like, okay, the tower represents like the force of nature that moves through us in some ways, but I have it in here in the crossed fingers. Okay. And that's because what is it that causes the tower to break down? So the Jungian perspective here would be like it's egoic. Okay, like there's like an egoic side of yourself, and that, you know, doesn't work against the more foundational layer of reality. So essentially it's like that structure gets broken down by reality coming in, and that's because that structure, you know, it maybe has, it's like we have this illusion of permanence, and that's where the cross fingers comes in. It's like we cross our fingers when we're like, just kidding. Like, I didn't really mean that. That's a kid thing again, like the
Right.
devil's got your nose. When we were kids, we might cross our fingers. I mean, like, I didn't really mean that. Well, I guess that's like what I would probably believe is really happening in a lot of ways with like the cosmic perspective of like our ego, you know, like our true self at the highest level might just be like, like, I'm just doing this for some fun, you know, like it was all good. And you're like, what? But like, really, if it's really all about just the fun to be had, then you really can't fault it because it's actually kind of smart. Like I'd prefer it to be about fun than a lot of other things. So, you know, that, and then I put that in my book to explain that like the tower represents forces that are like crossed, you know, the
Mm.
philosophical notion that Heraclitus brings up of like the idea that the entire universe is in like these flux of opposites constantly shifting from one to another. And so like one opposite becomes another opposite, and then it's within their like juxtaposition that we have the foundation of energy. And then like that is what combustion is. It's the combined burning up. So the tower could even be a symbol of like the combustion engine of like burning, you know, fire. And so yeah, it ends up in the tower is like an archetype of Mars. So then this is also about vitality. Yeah. Is that a satisfying explanation, Vance?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things and a lot of symbolism in the blasted tower. I
Yeah.
have to think about 9/11, you know.
Right.
Yeah, the two
That was a
towers
blasted tower.
together are very like they both happened, you know, it's kind of like my fingers, right? There's two towers. What are the odds of two towers and a building 7? I wonder what was that about, you know? There's
Mm.
also a third thing that happened as well. So we also can, and then if you think about it too, the tower archetype is associated with Mars, which is the fifth sphere in the Kabbalistic superstructure, you know, of the tree of life, which is the 5-star, you know, star. And then of course there was also the hit on the Pentagon, suppose, you know, so
Oh
you also
yeah.
have you also have another Martian tower based connection with that going on. I mean, you know, and then get this, the flight 727, right? 7 plus 7 is 14 plus 2, okay, 16. That's also the tower as well. I mean, what the heck?
Uh,
Mm.
Oh wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, so again, a lot of people think that, you know, there was a lot of occult forces being put into the planning of that, whoever did it.
No doubt.
or whatever.
Yeah,
or
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 whatever.
whatever. Yeah, again, we don't know how the plays come down the chute, right? I mean, it's one of the mysteries of that, because so many things. I mean, the universe is just chaos, right? Is what I'm trying to say. So there is a certain level that you can control that, but maybe another level where stuff can get beyond you, which I think is one of the fundamental stories of like our of our world. I think, I don't know who it was, maybe Joseph Campbell. He says like, okay, there's like 7 different stories that are always being told. And I was like, wow, that's really insightful. Okay, what are they? Well, one of them, I believe, like one of the most interesting ones is like the idea of like fire getting out of hand. A lot of stories involve some people playing with fire, and then it gets beyond what they're able to control. So like for instance, we have like Frankenstein, the guy who plays with fire and then the beast comes alive, or like Harry Potter, where it's like Lord Voldemort, attacks Harry Potter with his magic, and then the magic that he used gets the better of him. So I think that it's also possible that that fire is something that we should like really like. It's one of our better stories, is that fire takes on a life of its own. And that's where I think the tarot comes in for me when I like want to share this with the world. Why I'm really excited is because I think that the tarot can also take on a life of its own. For people who aren't very familiar with the tarot, like the benefit of this whole system is that it really is allowing you to connect with like fundamental like life force energies that these archetypes, they're very extreme in like their original form, and then like they can suddenly start to interact with your consciousness and take on a life of their own. And it's my belief that that property of becoming alive is the fundamental psychic act, because somehow you're able to be alive right now, looking like with me, even though you're made something like that. They're all somehow together and you're conscious of it. It's absolutely bonkers. And in that same way, I think that at a cosmic level, how does this happen? I think it happens through the spirit of play. And there's a really incredible poet called Fernando Pessoa, and he wrote in a book about how when he was a child, he was a person who had like many different personalities. He actually wrote several books from different authors all put together and about commenting on one another. And the Book of Disquiet, for example, is one of his books. It's a really, really good book, and super trippy perspective. But one of his books is Aspects, and it combines many of these. And in that book, he says like what it means, like the actual foundation of the psyche, he says, was like he realized it when he was like a child playing with like his toys. And he's like these toy soldiers, and it's like they were toys, but also like you can imply like in his head they were also like real soldiers. Like he really did see that like these items came to life in his hands. Like that was his mind just kind of like going into it. And so in the same way, I think the tarot can also help us to kind of like realize some of this faculty by giving us different things to project onto. Okay. And that's what's really helpful, is this process of like projection. Instead of doing it on your family and your friends and your workplace, like do it on the cards, right? Just put it on there, and then they can help you to organize it through synchronicity.
Yeah, Fernando Pessoa, he's a countryman, Portuguese guy, one of the underrated thinkers of our time. Well, this has been awesome. Great exposition and speculations there, Jeff. But yeah, we are at the end. I showed everybody the Handmade Tarot Game on the show notes.
Yep.
I will have your YouTube channel. What's the name of your YouTube channel? Just in
Oh,
case
it's the
somebody
Quest On channel. Quest,
Quest,
and
we
then
talked.
it's Quest_on. So I'll just send that to you after this. And then yeah, my final thoughts on all of this are praise to Vance over here for winning our little like bout. Because it's really to me like, okay, and then get this, right? He chooses the high priestess, but like what is this right here? Who's that? Right there, right? It's
The high priestess.
the high priestess, right? It's like, of course, she just jumped out to you. It's like, oh gosh, So anyways, for me though, again, go into yourself, everyone. Be happy with, just look inside, and that's the message, I guess, that would be the takeaway from this video tonight.
Yeah.
Just work with that high priestess energy.
Yeah, you are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You have so much potential. So awesome. Yeah, check out Jeff's work on the show notes. Audio version should be out probably in a couple of days. Tomorrow's kind of a weird day. Please support his work. Please donate so he can get it on the iPhone. And yeah, please support Aeon Byte. I can't do it without you. This is what I'm doing to spread that gnosis. If anything, share and subscribe, and yeah, tell everybody about this heresy, because again, the gnosis is just getting started and the world is only going to get weirder. So we need the fool, we need the trickster more than ever.
I'm really just so happy to get there with you guys. Thanks a lot for being a part of this, and thank you to the whole audience for being a part of, if you're still around at this point, just thank you so much for being a part of the fun wave.
Oh yeah, the Chatico was very cool tonight. Great comments, insights from people, and yeah, really appreciate Vance. Thanks for keeping the Chatico under control and kicking our asses tonight.
Oh, it's no effort at all. Everybody is cool, and thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.
Exactly. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for coming on the show. Yeah, and good luck with everything from your from getting this game out to
my next
interviewing the
book.
amazing Jeff and your next book. Yeah, on the Nordic.
And to be honest with you too, man, I got a lot more we can go about. There's some great discussions on Jung and Gnosis and stuff that I can talk about. I've had some really deep stuff that went with Jung and other types of just Gnostic type experiences, if you're interested more.
Yeah. We shall reconvene in the future, I'm sure, and cover all these things for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's always a lot to share, and sharing our insights and our past and our shadows can help somebody else out there, because there are people struggling. And again, there's nothing wrong with you people out there. You're amazing. It's all about just listening to our souls, understanding how those archetypes are moving, catching those waves.
and Vance goes all dark all of a sudden when we're talking about our shadows. So
he got censored by the gods.
Yeah, just love yourself, everyone. That's really the secret, I think, at the end of the day. That's the holy grail that you could ever ask for, would be to love yourself.
Amen. Well, thanks everybody. And as I always say, write your own gospel, live your own myth. Everybody take care until the next time. Good night.
Good night.